My name is Laura Bloomfield, and for 6 years I worked as the Director of Client Relations at Belmont Logistics, a mid-sized shipping company in Charlotte, North Carolina. I built that department from nothing. When I started, we had 2 clients and a spreadsheet held together with hope. By the time I was finished, we had 43 accounts and a retention rate that made our competitors nervous. I tell you this not to brag, but because you need to understand what I lost and what I got back. Her name was Karen Sutterfield. She started 8 months before everything fell apart, hired as a senior account manager directly under me. From the first week, something about her felt off. She smiled too wide in meetings, agreed with everything I said in front of our boss, and then quietly undermined my decisions the moment I left the room. I caught wind of it through Renata, my assistant, who heard things in the break room that I never did. "She's telling people you're difficult to work with," Renata told me one afternoon, her voice low. "She's saying you take credit for her ideas." I brushed it off at first. Office politics. Everyone deals with it. But then the emails started. "Karen, sing our VP on minor issues that should have stayed between us, framing routine decisions as my failures. Shed asked questions in meetings that weren't really questions, just traps dressed up as curiosity. Laura, didn't you say last quarter what hit that target?" I'm just trying to understand the discrepancy. I started documenting everything. Every email, every meeting note, every passive-aggressive comment. I didn't know yet how badly I'd need it. Then came the HR complaint. I was called into a conference room on a Tuesday morning in March. Our VP, Gregory Halpin, sat across from me along with someone from HR I'd never met, a woman named Bethany Cross. Bethany slid a folder across the table and told me there had been a formal complaint filed against me for creating a hostile work environment, for taking credit for Karen's projects, and for what the complaint called targeted exclusion of Karen from key meetings. I felt the floor tilt under me. None of it was true. I had included Karen in everything, had even mentored her, had defended her to other directors when her numbers came in soft. But here was a 3-page document, typed and formatted like a legal brief, outlining a pattern of behavior that simply did not exist. "We have to investigate," Bethany said, not unkindly. "You understand." I did understand. What I didn't understand was why nobody seemed interested in asking Karen the same hard question she was asking about me. For 3 weeks, I lived under a cloud. I was told to avoid one-on-one contact with Karen during the investigation. My calendar got quietly rearranged. People who used to stop by my office to chat started avoiding eye contact in the hallway. I felt the company tilting away from me in real time, and there was nothing I could do but wait and keep doing my job as well as I possibly could, because the moment I slipped, that would become the story. But I had something Karen didn't count on: receipts. Every email Shed sent undermining me. Every meeting where Shed taken credit for client retention strategies I'd built before she ever walked through the door. Every instance where her own performance metrics didn't match the narrative she was selling upstairs. I had it all, organized by date, saved across 3 different platforms, so nothing could mysteriously disappear. When HR finally interviewed me, I didn't get defensive. I didn't raise my voice. I simply opened my laptop and started walking Bethany Cross through 18 months of documentation. Client emails showing I'd personally saved 2 accounts Karen claimed credit for. Slack messages where Karen explicitly told a coworker, named Felicia, that she was building a case against me because she wanted my position. Felicia, it turned out, had screenshots too, and she was tired of being asked to lie for someone she didn't even like. Then there was the timesheet discrepancy. Karen had been claiming hours for a major client presentation in Atlanta that she never actually attended. I had the flight manifests. I had the hotel confirmation showing she canceled the trip 2 days before. I had the presentation itself, delivered solely by me, with my name on every slide and Karen's absence noted in the meeting minutes by 3 other attendees. Bethany's expression changed somewhere around the 4th piece of evidence. She stopped writing notes about my behavior and started asking different questions entirely. The investigation that was supposed to end my career instead turned its focus where it belonged. HR pulled Karen's email records. They found message threads where she coached another employee on what to tell investigators. They found a pattern stretching back to her previous job, A job shed left under circumstances nobody had bothered to verify during her hiring process because her resume was polished and her interview had been, in Gregory's words, incredibly persuasive. 3 weeks after my interview, I was called back into that same conference room. This time, Gregory looked exhausted, and Bethany looked like someone had spent a long weekend reviewing 5 years of someone else's lies. Karen Sutterfield's employment has been terminated, effective immediately, Bethany said. We owe you an apology, Laura. A real one. I won't pretend that moment didn't feel good. ID spent 3 weeks being treated like a problem to be managed, and now the truth had simply done what truth tends to do when you give it enough room. It found its way to the surface. Karen didn't go quietly. She tried to argue that the timesheet was a clerical error. She tried to claim the Slack messages were taken out of context. She even tried to suggest that Felicia and I had coordinated our stories, which would have been almost impressive if it weren't so transparently desperate. Security walked her out with a single banker's box, and from my office window, I watched her load it into her car, without once looking back at the building. I'd love to tell you that was the end of it, but karma has a way of— 6 months later, I was promoted to VP of Client Strategy, a title that didn't exist before HR realized how much unpaid extra work I'd been quietly absorbing for years. Felicia became my senior account manager, and we built a department culture where nobody had to wonder if the person smiling at them in a meeting was also drafting a complaint about them in private. As for Karen, I heard through an old industry contact that she'd applied for a director-level role at a logistics firm 2 states over. The hiring manager doing his due diligence called Belmont for a reference check. HR policy only allowed confirmation of dates of employment, nothing more. But sometimes silence says everything a sentence couldn't. He didn't get the job. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. It started with a phone call in late October, 7 months after Karen's termination. I was at my desk reviewing quarterly numbers when my cell rang, an unknown number with a Charlotte area code. Is this Laura Bloomfield? The voice was clipped professional, a little nervous. Speaking. My name is Marcus Delaney. I'm an attorney representing Karen Sutterfield. I wanted to give you the courtesy of a call before you receive anything formal. My client is filing a wrongful termination suit against Belmont Logistics, and your name is named in the complaint. I sat very still for a moment, looking out my office window at the parking lot where I'd watched Karen drive away for the last time. I appreciate the call, Mr. Delaney. I'll have our legal team reach out to you directly. I hung up and immediately felt my stomach drop, not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I knew exactly what was coming. Months of depositions. Months of having to relive every email, every Slack message, every moment of that investigation, dragged back into the light for a courtroom instead of a conference room. Gregory called an emergency meeting that afternoon. Bethany was there, along with our general counsel, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patrice Okafor who I'd only met once before, at a holiday party. She's claiming the investigation was biased, Patrice said, sliding copies of the complaint across the table. She's alleging that Felicia coordinated false testimony with you, that the timesheet discrepancy was fabricated, and that the company terminated her to protect a favored employee rather than conduct a fair process. I almost laughed, except none of it was funny. Every piece of evidence in that investigation was documented independently. Flight manifests don't lie. Hotel cancellations don't lie. We know, Patrice said. But lawsuits aren't about what's true. They're about what you can prove, twice, once to settle it, and once if it goes to trial. I need you prepared for both. So began 4 months I hadn't planned for. Patrice walked me through deposition prep like a coach drilling an athlete before a championship game. She warned me that Karen's attorney would try to rattle me, twist my words, find any inconsistency between what I said in the original HR interview and what I'd say now, months later, under oath. Stick to what you can prove, Patrice told me, more than once. Never guess. Never fill silence just to fill it. If you don't remember, say you don't remember. The deposition happened on a gray Thursday in January in a downtown law office with too much beige carpet and not enough windows. Marcus Delaney was younger than I expected, sharp-suited, clearly hungry to make a name for himself on this case. He started gently, easing into background questions about my role, my tenure, my relationship with Karen. Then he leaned in. Isn't it true, Ms. Bloomfield, that you felt threatened by Karen Sutterfield's talent and ambition? No, I said simply. I felt undermined by her dishonesty. Those are different things. He tried a different angle. You and Felicia Marsh were close colleagues, weren't you? Close enough to coordinate a story that would protect your own position? Felicia came forward independently with her own documentation before I ever knew she had any concerns about Karen at all. I didn't ask her for anything. She asked HR to include her statement. Patrice had warned me he'd circle the same questions from different angles, hoping I'd slip into inconsistency or frustration. I didn't give him either. Every answer I gave matched the paper trail exactly because the paper trail was the truth and ID had 18 months of practice telling it. By the end of the 4-hour deposition, Marcus Delaney's questions had grown shorter, his pauses longer. I could see it on his face. The look of a lawyer realizing his client's story had more holes than foundation. 3 weeks later, Patrice called me into her office with something close to a smile. They're withdrawing the suit, she said. Karen's attorney advised her the case wasn't winnable. No settlement, no apology, just a quiet withdrawal filed this morning. I felt something unclench in my chest that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying since that first phone call in October. It wasn't triumph, exactly. It was relief, the particular relief of watching the truth hold its shape under pressure, instead of bending the way Karen had always assumed it would. I heard one more thing about Karen almost a year after that. A friend who still worked in logistics recruiting mentioned, almost in passing, that Karen had left the industry entirely. She was selling real estate now, 2 states away, under a slightly different version of her name. I didn't feel triumphant hearing it. I felt something quieter, the simple, settled knowledge that some people spend so much energy trying to take what isn't theirs that they never notice the door closing behind them. As for me, the VP title became permanent, then expanded. Felicia eventually took over my old director role when I moved further up, and we built something neither of us had during those early Karen years, a department where the truth didn't need defending because nobody felt the need to lie in the first place. I still keep the habit, though. Every email, every meeting note, saved and dated and backed up in 3 places. Not out of fear anymore. Just out of respect for what it taught me, that patience, paired with proof, will always outlast someone else's performance.